Chris Lautenslager, thank you so much for coming to the Inner Edison podcast. Did I get that right?
You did. Thank you, Ed. It's a pleasure being here. It's funny. With a name like Lautenslager, people look at it and it's a little intimidating at times. And I found when I traveled around the world that there are 3 places in the world that see my name. I'll check into a hotel and feel quite comfortable, reflecting it immediately. One is in Germany, another's in Switzerland, and the third, interestingly enough, was Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Why? Is there a ball player there or something?
No, that's just a really German town.
Oh, gotcha. All right. A lot of people aren't going to know who you are. They don't, they just, and please don't take that personally, but my listeners might not know who everybody, you are. So what is your background?
So my background is I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I grew up in a family that owned a small business. That's how I learned about small businesses. Was that business was a part of our family. Everyone participated in it. And I was there day in, day out. And then when I was away at college, my father unexpectedly died of a heart attack when he was 48 years old. And from there, I followed the, quote, American dream. I went to the best schools possible. I finished my undergrad in Colorado, went to Northwestern, got my MBA in finance and economics, and went on to work at some of the finest institutions in the financial world on Wall Street in New York City. I retired and moved to my favorite state. I've been to 49 of the 50. My favorite is Colorado. I retired in Breckenridge, Colorado. And then the pandemic came, and I saw what was going on with small businesses across this country and knew that they were just being devastated. They were being really hurt, and it broke my heart. And so I came out of retirement to be an advocate for small businesses, because I do not hear a voice out there reminding people of the importance and value of small businesses within our communities. And I think they're the fabric of our communities. I think they're part of what makes our neighborhoods great and enjoyable, what makes our lifestyles great. And so that's what I did. That's a little of my background.
Okay. And how do you help small businesses?
So I'm doing a number of different things. One is I'm a speaker. I'm a professional speaker, and I go and I give lectures and speeches about the importance of small businesses in our communities. I also have created a class, and the class is called Valuing Yourself and Your Business. And the class is about identifying what your values are, so that you can use them as guideposts to reinstitute, to reintroduce joy and happiness into your life. Because once you understand what brings you joy and happiness, it's really easy to say, should I turn right or should I turn left? I found that small business owners today, particularly after the pandemic, they're struggling. They're struggling not just financially, but also emotionally. Being a small business owner is a lonely job at times. You have to make all the decisions. There's not a lot of people you can talk to about it, and it gets tough. And so I've created this class to help remind business owners that they have choices, that your choices are part of your mindset. My father, unfortunately, had a mindset of responsibility and obligation. When I once asked him, Dad, how do you do this every day? How do you get up every single morning and be responsible for all these people and for all these customers and all of this inventory? And how do you do it? And his response broke my heart, Ed. He said, what else am I going to do? And I think there's a lot of small business owners that are out there today that have that sense of responsibility and obligation. Plus, you throw in some of the feelings and emotions from the pandemic, such as resentment and maybe a little self-pity thrown in there. And it's a stew of uncomfortability. I want to help remind people why they got into business in the first place, how they can reinstitute joy into their lives. And that's what my classes are about.
Gotcha. Yeah, because a lot of business owners going through the pandemic, what they went through, now on the other side, and a lot of employees didn't come back to work. They didn't care. And then you have those employees who didn't come back to work going out and starting their own businesses. So I can see how the business owner feels, because I am a small business owner. And sometimes I feel, why am I doing this? Why am I killing myself to do this when I could go, with the licensing we have to have, go under somebody else, have no headache. I still do the same thing, but I have no headache.
Well,
Whoop.
so small businesses have been really sort of underappreciated. Working for, the man, working for somebody else has its pluses and minuses. I've done both. I've worked for really very prestigious global institutions, and I walked away from there, at least for myself, because I know my values. And one of my personal values is freedom, interestingly enough. And freedom to me represents the ability to be able to make choices, to be able to make my own choices. I realized after going through a series of exercises that I don't like being told what to do. Never have, ever since I was a little boy. Doesn't matter if it's a teacher or my parents or my girlfriend or a school guard crossing. I don't like being told what to do. So working for large organizations isn't a very good fit for me. Plus, I learned that companies don't love you. They are really focused on their primary mission, increasing shareholder value.
Yep.
You are nothing more than a tool in increasing shareholder value. And I don't like being considered a tool.
But people don't realize that that's what the corporations are. That's what the company's for. It's to increase the value, just like you said, of the shareholder. It's about the shareholder, not the
It's
employees.
about the
However,
shareholder. It's
the
not the employees.
the employees now want it about them and want to come to companies that have a purpose and have certain things. And I get all that and I understand that, but it's just so much harder to do stuff today. Like in California, there's a congresswoman or whatever she's trying to run for, is trying to get, they got the minimum wage to $20 and 22 for fast food. Now they're trying to, she's like, we need to get it to $50 over in the Bay Area, because that's a living wage. Why don't they move somewhere else? What I'm getting at is that's what's affecting the small business now. All that additional government extra stuff they're trying to put on you.
I was recently in Oakland, California for an event.
Sorry.
I know.
It's
I
an
haven't
hour
been
and
there.
something away from me. I know, so I'm close to that.
I had been to Berkeley many, many years ago. Berkeley's a delightful town. So I go to this event. It was a speaking event, and I'm at a downtown hotel. I walk into the lobby of the hotel to check in. There is a uniformed policeman standing at a podium, letting people in or out. When he let me in, I checked in. I like to get up very early in the morning, and I do some reflection time in the morning. So I was up early before the hotel's coffee shop was open. So I was going to go to a local Starbucks, which was a block away. As I go to leave the hotel, that uniformed off-duty police person pulled me aside and said, "Where are you going?" I told her the Starbucks, and she said, "Leave your wallet behind, leave your phone behind, don't have your earplugs, and if you're not back in 30 minutes, I'm going to call the police." I thought she was joking. She was dead serious. Don't wear any earplugs. Keep alert. I walked to the Starbucks. There's a line of three. It's about 5 a.m. There's a line of 3 people standing outside. And there's a person, a security guard, who lets one person into the Starbucks at a time and locks the door behind them. They get their order. They go in. They take their order. They go out. And a new person comes in. That's the dystopia world of bad policies as reflected in Oakland, California. So policies matter. And you're right. If your environment matters, if you're in that environment, leave. That's really what I can suggest, is leave.
Yeah. Move somewhere else, or stay and fight.
Stay and fight. If you're a fighter, go and fight.
I'm on talk radio, so I fight. So I'm on Power Talk 1360 iHeart Radio. I talk about real estate and finance, but I talk about community and how important it is. And you need to stay. People just don't get out and vote. And 58% of the people got out and voted in our community the last election. That's a problem.
If people are surprised by the policies and the environment in which they're surrounded by themselves, policies matter.
Mhm.
Politics matters. So if this is the world that you're in, take a look around at why those policies are in place and what the impact is. So that's one of the reasons why I like working with small businesses, because small businesses being privately owned, they can make decisions and they can implement policies, they can implement procedures that have an impact on their community, on their employees, on their own lives. Whereas with large public organizations, um, they will be sued by by activist shareholders to ensure that all choices that are made are to increase shareholder value. That's why there's no more reinvestment. That's why there's no more R&D. That's why there's no employee benefits. That's why there's no investment in the community. That's why they try to cut benefits for all of their employees. It is because the only focus, as Milton Friedman said in 1970, the only social purpose of corporations is to increase shareholder benefit. That was a starting bell for all the repercussions of what's going on in corporate America today.
Right. And I could see uh, that, and I can see all sides and how, because I have to as a host, but I also see the most important thing is knowing where you're going to do your business. And it's the same thing I do talk about real estate. Wherever you're buying at, you need to know whether what the policies are and the politics are wherever you're going to be at, because unfortunately they come into play more than any other time in history right now, and it really messes with what people can do. Like we just talked about what you just said about Oakland. Well, In and Out just left there. All the Walmarts have left there. Walgreens have left there because of those policies that they have put into place that allowed it to happen. So, and I don't want to keep staying on the whole politics, but it affects us more, I think, than ever before. If you look back, there's always been politics, but it just seems like it's more front and center than any other time in history.
Policy matters. I'll just leave it at that. And you can be a fighter and look to affect change. But like states like California, there is no two-party system. The opportunity for change is really very, very limited. It seems that the system has become strictly a patriarch kind of system, and that people are paid to be able to provide services to the government, and taxes are continually raised to support that type of governmental infrastructure.
Right.
So we'll leave it at that.
Right.
All I
And just
know
so
is
you know, we
I'm not
lost.
moving back. I'm not moving to Oakland.
I know, but there's other places that are fine. And a lot of people ask me why I don't leave. Well, two things: weather,
Mm-hmm.
and my family's here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't have to deal with weather until I leave California.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking humidity, all the other stuff that I have to deal with.
I understand.
Yeah. But
I
I mean,
understand.
and again, when you said that one party system, that was a Republican's fault. That was Arnold Schwarzenegger. He tried to get a fast one over and it came back and to bite him. The top two people on the ballot instead of the words top two parties on the ballot. He left the word party out. So now you're in. So do you travel all over?
I do
Do you
travel
help
all
companies
over.
everywhere, or do you help just companies in Colorado, Breckenridge?
No, I live in Chicago, Illinois right now, and
Okay.
policies here are troublesome too in some
I thought
respects.
you
I
were in
mean,
Colorado.
crime.
When
I
did you leave
I
Colorado?
I re- I left Colorado because two things. One is I wanted to get more engaged again.
Okay.
I found that not I was I was 60 and retired, and I was finding that I was bored. I lived the American dream. I had all the things that I was supposed to accumulate and have and retire. And I went to Colorado and I was skiing 100 days a year and playing golf all the time and hiking and biking and all the things that I loved. I love the outdoors. I love Colorado. I love the mountains. And I just wasn't engaged. I didn't feel like I felt like I had more to give. And then I was invited to a charity event back in Chicago, and the woman who invited me was a woman that I dated when I was in my 20s here in Chicago, and we reconnected. And relationships matter. They're the joy of life, and I was able to restart a relationship with someone who is an amazing woman who I feel really grateful and fortunate to be part of. And she's completely committed to Chicago. Her family's here. She's wants Chicago to be a great city, and she works very hard. She's a fighter. She works very hard to improve the quality of life here in Chicago. So I understand that completely.
Yeah. I mean, because Chicago's like Oakland, the policies and other stuff.
It's really,
hold on. What I mean is the policies. I didn't say that the crime rate is there yet. It's pretty bad. There's areas that is. So when you look at Oakland as an example, that's bad. San Jose's not, but Oakland is, and they're close together. You follow me? So
I do.
Yes. And I mean, San Francisco overall is just what they allow them to do on the streets. It's not the same as what's going on. Oakland is a unique animal. That's where the Raiders are from. All right. We'll just leave it at that. I'm a Bronco fan, so I can say that because I lived in Colorado as a kid. So that's how I got to be the Bronco fan. But I'm just saying areas really matter.
Areas matter.
And if you're going to be somewhere to make it, I always say, make it better than you left it. You find it, always make it better than you find it. And so if you're going to stay in Chicago and fight, the same reason I'm staying here in California, because I think we can turn this around. So
I wish you the best, because California used to be a great state. It was the Golden State. Everyone went there to make their fortune, and did.
We have had recently Gen Zs. We're the second state to get the most Gen Zs brought back to. So we're getting more Gen Zs here, and Texas is getting them more than us. But I'm just saying, shocking to me how many of those people are coming back to California, or coming to California for the first time because of tech or military, or they have a degree. You can't count anything out. And again, we're going to get back to because I wanted to talk about your book before we get off of here. But being in Chicago and doing what you're doing, what are you running into for more of the small businesses there in Chicago than anywhere else?
So business is still open here in Chicago. It's open in the suburbs. People have an entrepreneurial spirit. People that are older, retire, they leave the state. The taxes are too high. The weather is not favorable to them. They leave the state. But there's some great universities here: Northwestern and University of Chicago, University of Illinois, DePaul, Loyola. So there is a framework for research. There's a framework for educated, entrepreneurial people. And I think more and more people are just doing their best to keep government out of their lives. It seems to be the attitude that I come across, is just as long as as long as I don't get robbed, as long as my safety is reasonably secure, and you don't have usury rates in regards to your taxes, I'll survive. But it's, I go to some other portions of this country, and it is rocking and rolling. People are open for business, to say the least. You go to Austin, it's insanity there. It's like there's a new business opening every day. Similar with Florida. It's just so entrepreneurial. You go to New York City, and I love New York City. I lived in New York City for 24 years.
Wow.
I lived in New York City during the Renaissance. I call it during the Renaissance, in which Mayor Bloomberg, I think the best mayor I've ever experienced in any city, in any place, a man who truly took the job simply because he believed he could do it better than anybody else, and he wanted to make New York City a great city. Couldn't bribe him. He wasn't there for the money. He was there strictly to make it a better place, and he did. So I loved New York City when Bloomberg was mayor.
Yeah, he made some changes. I try to explain to people, if we don't change where we're going with inflation, all the other stuff, and potentially elections and everything else, there's an old movie, you might know it. It's called Warriors. Remember that old movie?
Yeah. Or okay. Escape from New York with Kurt Russell.
Well, that was really bad. But Warriors, they traveled the subways and the trains, and they showed how horrible the city was, because that's how it truly was.
That's how it was.
Yeah. And that's where San Francisco was going. That is where a lot of these places are going if policies don't change. And again, I look at that example. We went through that with Carter and all this stuff, and then Reagan came in and made the change and fixed stuff. And same with what happened in New York City. It can happen again. People just have to get fed up with what's going on.
Yeah, it can happen again. New York, there was, people were talking about when Dinkins was mayor, is it ungovernable? Because the riots had just happened in Crown Heights, and people were truly afraid. You could not go to certain sections of the city. And when I was there, it was just beginning to change when I first moved there in 1995. But during the 80s and 70s, they had signs on your window in your car, doors unlocked, no car radio here, the car is empty. The crime was rampant. You could not go to certain places. And I felt I was really fortunate, again, when I was there during the Renaissance. I could go to any place in any borough at any time and feel completely safe. I never felt threatened at any point.
Right. I mean, and that's what's happening now with your signs about the cars. I'm sorry, we're stuck on something here, but that's happening in California in certain places where they put a note in, my car's unlocked. I remember if you had a rag top on anything, you never locked your doors of your car because it was cheaper for them to open the car door and steal the thing than cut your rag top and then have to replace that and the stuff they stole. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is, it doesn't matter where you're at. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be something wherever you're residing at. But today you can live anywhere you want for a lot of these different companies that you can set up. There's so many companies that are virtual, and some companies have to be in person. And you just have to find out what works for you and what your company is supposed to be. But you also have to find out who your perfect client is, because if you don't know who your client is, you're not going to be able to set up your company the right way to begin with.
Agreed. And I've done work in regards to who my client is, and I know who, they call him an avatar today. My client is the business person who has owned their business for 20 years. They have a successful business. It's been running for a period of time now. They don't want it to get any bigger. They like it, but particularly after the pandemic, they're tired. They feel like what's the purpose? It's become a drag. It's become headaches. It's become a task. It's become an obligation and a responsibility. And when those are your purposes for getting up in life, I know business owners that sit in their car 15 minutes before they go to open the door because they have to pump themselves up to be like, here we go. And life doesn't have to be that way. In fact, I beg of you to take the time to make it different, because like you were saying, it's not going to change unless you change it. You can't expect the world to miraculously reconform itself in a manner that's going to change your life. So there's an old quote by a 6th century Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu, and he says, essentially, where you're going is where you're going to end up. Unless you change your path, the pathway that you're on is the pathway you'll continue down. And it's our responsibility to make those changes. And I know this for a fact because I've gone through horrible periods of time. In my family, addiction was rampant. So both my parents died from addiction when they were young. My older brother was murdered in a drug deal that went bad. My younger brother committed suicide because he was on drugs. And my sister just recently died of cirrhosis, a horrible, painful death.
Wow.
I've personally gone through addiction and been in periods of deep despair and darkness. First of all, you can get help, go and get sober, go and get clean. That's step number one. But once you're at that point, that's the starting gate of being able to say, oh my gosh, I have a new lease on life and I can make choices. I have choices. How do I want to go? And that's kind of where the whole purpose of those classes came in, Ed, is people are like, I don't know what I want. And I'm like, great, let's take some time and figure out what you want, because it's different for every single person. There's these formulas of how do you get happy, or the 7 steps to getting happy, it really all starts with understanding what brings each of us uniquely joy. And once you've identified that, then you can start doing things like losing weight or exercising or meditating or going through self-reflection or journaling. As I had mentioned, I do a morning reflection. And in my morning reflection, I do some spiritual reading. I do some journaling, which has been the biggest surprise in regards to my personal growth of anything. And I do some meditation. It's changed my life. It's changed my life.
Yeah, a lot of people have to ask themselves. So this is something I had to do recently with what happened to our industry, because the question was, did this happen to me or did this happen for me? And I looked at it. At first, I was like, this happened to me, and I was not very happy with it, because I knew it was coming, but I didn't think it was going to go as high. I've been in this industry for 25 years. I didn't think that rates were going to go up 5%. I knew they were going to go up because I knew what was going on and what was happening, and what they started with shutting down a pipeline and all the other stuff. And then I got to a point where it's like, okay, let me relook at this and see how this actually happened for me. And then it made me make some changes and do some other stuff, to a point where I don't love this industry as much as I used to, right? It's just not the same as it used to be. And it's not because it's automated. It's easy. Things are easy to be done now, but it's just one of those things. I've been doing it for so long. I prefer talking to people. I love telling people stories. And that's what I do with all my podcasts and everything else. I do radio show, and yeah, I still do that in mortgage industry, but it's not what I'm really focused on as much as I used to be. You understand what I'm getting at? It's just like a
I know,
chain. It's one
actually,
of those things. Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're talking about. And, as part of, once we identify what your values are, it's about identifying what steps and actions, because your behaviors and actions actually influence your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. What are we going to do that's going to maintain a sense of happiness? And it's all about relationships and purpose. Relationships and purpose. Why do you get up in the morning? Who do you serve? And when I made the statement before that companies don't love you. Companies don't love you. But people do. So if you ever have this issue of work-life balance, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not even a choice. Your company doesn't love you. The people in your life love you. Help them love you. Love them back. Because that's the richest of life.
Yeah, because most people focus on work and not their home life. And then you have an unhappy home life, and then sometimes, you might be doing well at work, but then you have an unhappy home life. It's hard to have the perfect balance there.
My emphasis will always be on the relationships within your life. You have those set up well, everything else flows. Everything
All right.
else flows.
Question for you. So your book, A Prosperity Loop.
Yes.
One thing I saw on there is a wealth creation model for socially conscious leaders and their teams, right? But you just said the company doesn't love you.
Well, this is a private company, your own company that you get to create. Okay. So,
and do what you want with it is what you're telling me.
Do what you want with it. And when you're socially conscious, so there's 2 fundamental principles associated with the prosperity loop. One is that companies are about more than just making money. Okay. Now, I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. And as a private equity friend of mine once said, no profit, no company, no purpose. So you have to make money. Otherwise you don't exist. So I'm good with making money. We should make money. When you provide value services to people, you should be rewarded and paid for that. So win-win. That's how the system works. So, but there's more than just making money. If your sole purpose is how well did we do this month, if your sole focus is making more, it's an empty, hollow race. Okay. That will never be satisfied. So there's more to a company than just making money. There's a purpose, and you can make the purpose in so many different directions, whether it's an individual, whether it's a team member, whether it's the community, but find something that people can collectively buy into. That's what makes joy. The other aspect of the book that I emphasize is that there's no such thing as a self-made millionaire. That's a fallacy. That's a myth. Every single person needs help, and your employees are not just an expense, which is the trap that so many business people, small business people in particular, fall into, because it's usually their biggest expense. But your employees are your greatest asset. They're your frontline people. They're the ones that create value and wealth within your organization. They are the ones that are helping build your life. When you treat them as your most important asset, when you invest in them, when you care for them, when you share the wealth of the organization with them and get them vested in the organization, you will be rewarded.
As long as you hired right from the beginning.
Oh gosh, Ed, that's so key.
Yeah, because the biggest problem with small businesses, you hire fast and you fire slow.
It's not just about the skills that someone has. It's about their integrity.
Because you can train them.
You can train them. It's about how do they work well with others. You can train skills. You can't train values. And one bad employee is poison, is just poison. They can set you back so far, so fast, that hiring is the number one concern. I couldn't agree more.
Chris, anything else you want to add today before we go? Because we just added a lot right there. I mean, the most important. I'm just saying, you talk about your book and your company and all this stuff all the time. I want to make sure I hit everything you wanted to get across today. We went across a lot of stuff for people to listen to.
We did, Ed, and I love talking, and I love being part of this. So thank you, first of all, for sharing your audience and letting me participate in your podcast. You can, something I'd like to share is how people can get a hold of me. They can go to www.get-looped.com. That's www.get-looped.com. We have a lot of fun things going on besides the class. We have a golf outing on August 12th for small business owners, and that's going to be a lot of fun. There's a charity component associated with that also.
I assume that's in Chicago.
It's in Waukegan, yes. Come on and join us, Ed. Love to have you.
I don't play golf like I used to. Yeah.
You mean like your imagination?
No, I play more military golf now. Left, right. So
I understand. Yeah. Well, this is about having fun and sharing ideas with other business people, because I'll talk about a certain topic that morning. We'll talk about it within the experience of the golf outing, and then we'll have a share and care afterwards before we have food, celebration, and rewards. So www.get-loop.com. Please come join us, find out what we're doing, be part of the revolution.
And if somebody wants to find your book, The Prosperity Loop, where is that? Is that on Amazon?
I'd actually prefer that you go to bookshop.com. That supports all your local bookshops.
There you go. Listen to him. Chris Lautenslager, thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. Have a great day.